Today I'm going to make a tutorial based out of this book that I feel like you don't learn anywhere else. This is like the Bible for FPV. It's amazing. So if you guys want any tutorials based on any of the things that are in this book, let me know, comment below. The main maneuver that I wanted to talk about is something that I haven't found any tutorials about this online yet. And I feel like this is one of the big key concepts that every drone pilot needs to understand, especially when learning how to orbit and how to chase an object or how to track an object. And that's the difference between default stance and outside stance. So I'm just gonna go over how to do some of these basic maneuvers here in the Liftoff Simulator. This is one of the biggest things that helped me. As I was learning, I started with the DJI simulator and it was just too floaty. The physics weren't really realistic. So as soon as I got the Liftoff Simulator, it really helped me. So I just go here into free flight. It has a ton of these different maps that you can choose from. To practice chasing, I like going to the green and just doing no track. Also, since I have the DJI FPV drone, I really wanted to get a drone that behaves similarly in the simulator. So I went into downloads and then typed in FPV drone, and I found a drone that somebody made in the community that pretty closely simulates how that FPV drone behaves on DJI. Okay, so let me go over the main differences between inside stance and outside stance. So inside stance, as you're turning, first you roll and then you yaw. Then you roll, then you yaw. Then you roll, then you yaw. Outside stance, the main difference is you yaw first and then you roll. Yaw first, roll. Yaw first, roll. Inside stance, you kind of weave. I call it inside stance, it's actually default stance. So default stance, you can kind of weave in and out of these trees, but you don't really focus on them. So outside stance, you can focus on each tree as you're going through. You can be on the outside of something while keeping the camera focused on it. The best way to keep focused on an object while you're turning is the outside stance. So the inside stance looks like this. When you go to orbit, you roll first and then you yaw. You want to keep it on the inside of your screen. If it starts to get towards the outside of the orbit, you'll find yourself crashing into that object. So the main difference is here as I go to orbit this tree. Notice my right stick goes to the bottom left quadrant. So if you kind of split up the quadrant into four separate, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. As I roll first and then yaw to orbit, I'll find the right stick goes to the bottom left quadrant. So you'll notice inside stance, the horizon tips inside the direction that I'm gonna orbit. The outside stance, if I yaw first, the horizon flips the other way, and then my right stick goes to the top left quadrant. And this is orbiting with the outside stance. Also, what the outside stance will help you do, let's say for example, you're going straight towards this tree, you can enter the outside stance and orbit around it. The main application of this is when you're chasing an object. So when you're chasing an object, inside stance allows you to follow behind the object using roll and then yaw, roll, yaw, roll, yaw. But a lot of times you'll find yourself wanting to either orbit the object or you end up going too fast and you need to orbit around the object. So in that case, that's when you want to enter the outside stance. So let's say I want to orbit around this, but I'm in the inside stance. It doesn't really work. If you're behind the object, you want to orbit around it, you can't really be in the inside stance and still keep the camera on it the entire time. So the main way the outside stance comes in handy, so let's say I'm orbiting this object and I want to orbit around it, or I'm coming in too fast. You yaw first and then you roll. That allows you to orbit around the object while keeping the camera focused on it the entire time. So you'll notice inside stance, you kind of stay right above the track the entire time. Outside stance, you're on the outside of the track while you're keeping your camera focused on whatever you're tracking. Also, you can orbit around other obstacles. While you're tracking an object. Oh, I was going to try to go under the bench. Didn't work. Something I feel like everybody should know, but for some reason there's not really a tutorial on it. It's something you kind of just pick up as you go, unless you get the book FPV Flight Dynamics and then you kind of learn it. But most people I found kind of try to track an object with the inside stance, and they don't really know about outside, especially when they're too high and they're coming in too fast. They kind of do like this awkward little, like, okay, let's try to find it. When in that situation, if you're coming in too fast, you could easily go into the outside stance and then orbit around it until you're going slow, and then you can go back into the inside stance. Or if you want to go around these trees, outside stance, orbit around. And I always just pretend like there's a little four-wheeler driving along this trail. This is kind of my main drill when it comes to practicing chasing, is right here. So outside stance is one of the biggest things that helped me when I was learning how to track an object. It made tracking an object so much easier. Being able to stay on the outside of the trail while still keeping the camera focused on it. So hopefully this tutorial had some value for you guys. It's something I haven't really seen any other tutorials on. I haven't seen very many tutorials on the book FPV Flight Dynamics or any of the concepts that are out of it. So if this was value to you guys, like, subscribe, put in the comments, let me know what other things you're wanting to learn from this book. And I'd be glad to do any other tutorial on the different concepts out of FPV Flight Dynamics. We'll see you guys and have a great day.